Hey bees, I'm Marie from Humblebee and Me, and welcome to the first video of 2018. Before we dive in, I'd like to sort of apologize in advance if my furnace kicks in the middle of filming. I have turned it down, but it is currently, and I am not exaggerating, minus 41 degrees with wind chill outside, and that is in Celsius, but at temperatures that cold, it really doesn't matter if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit. So it's freezing, and my furnace it's doing what I love, and it's keeping me warm, so apologies if it just starts going in the middle of filming, because I'm not turning it off today, sorry. So today we are making a gorgeous ginger oak moss cleansing balm in a stick or a tube format. And so this isn't quite as simple as just pouring any old cleansing balm recipe into a tube. I did tweak it a bit because when you make a cleansing balm that goes in a pot, you want to sort of be able to scoop it up. But with a cleansing balm in a tube, what you want to be able to do is take the lid off and then glide it over your skin and have it just melt nicely on contact with your skin and leave a thin film. You don't want it to be sort of smearing like a very enthusiastic first grader with a glue stick who's just and then there's just tons of product everywhere. You just want like a thin sheen so that you can then wipe it off with a damp cloth. And that is a super, super, super easy way to clean your face. I made the first version of this recipe for my trip to New Zealand. So here it is, and there's still plenty of it left. And so I tried it in one of these paperboard containers because I knew I would be giving this paperboard container a real run for its money. It was going to be traveling to the other side of the world and back. I was going to be handling it likely with wet hands and with potentially dirty hands, and it would be getting absolutely thrown around in my bag. The container actually held up reasonably well, sort of all things considered, but I don't think I would recommend a paperboard container for something where it's going to be encountering water on a regular basis, which, I did. But yeah, there you can see that this actually held up pretty well. So this is a paperboard container from Ivan over at Humblebee, which is a packaging supplier located here in Calgary in Canada, but of course they ship. And I have found that these are some of the best paperboard containers I've used. So, if this one held up sort of relatively well, I would be fairly suspicious of other ones holding up anywhere close to this well, because usually they don't do well just sitting on my counter, let alone getting thrown around in my bag and handled with wet hands all the time. But yeah, this one was sort of version 1, and then I have improved it. And so this is the version that I'm sharing with you today. And so one of the biggest changes that I made was, as you can see, the packaging, but the other one is that I dropped the clay. So you can see that this one is a slightly different color than this one. And so I did put some Rasool clay in this one, but it really didn't stay in suspension very well because I needed to pour it when it was still quite liquidy so that it would go into the tube nicely. But then that meant that the clay didn't stay in suspension. So as I've been using this, I've been finding kind of blobs of clay throughout it that I haven't been that stoked about. And I have a strong suspicion that I'm going to find quite a lot of clay in the bottom of it when I get down there. So we dropped the clay for this version as well. The scent blend is one that I absolutely fell in love with this summer when I used it in a ginger silk lotion. And so it's a blend of oak moss, michelia alba, and CO2 distilled ginger root. And so oak moss is just it's an absolutely beguiling scent. It's rich and deep and sweet and mysterious, and it's one of those scents where you smell it and you're not quite sure what it is, and I love that. It's sort of the same with labdanum. You smell it and you're like, I love that, and I can't immediately say that's lemon or that's lavender. It's just sort of what's that? Oh, so I'm a huge fan of it, and we really don't need much of it in here to give an absolutely gorgeous effect. Now, if you don't want to use the essential oil blend that I've used, you 100% don't have to. This is just something that I absolutely love, but obviously the cleansing balm will still work just as well if you use a different essential oil or if you leave it unscented. This cleansing balm is pretty darn easy to make, as with sort of most anhydrous things. The only sort of quasi-tricky part of it is that we are going to be incorporating the use of a thermometer because we are adding a preservative. And when we need it to be liquidy enough that we can pour it into our tube, but not so hot that it's going to compromise the efficacy of our preservative. And so we need to use a thermometer to make sure that it is sort of just below the point where the preservative can be safely added, but it's still liquidy enough. So that's about the only kind of tricky part, but it's really not tricky at all. So yeah, let's go make this gorgeous cleansing balm. We'll begin by combining all of the ingredients for our heated phase in a small heat-resistant glass measuring cup. So this is a 1 cup or 250 milliliter Pyrex measuring cup. So we'll need 2.5 grams of Polawax, 2 grams of Polysorbate 80, 10.6 grams of safflower oil, 2.7 grams of castor oil, 4.7 grams of stearic acid, and 2 grams of cetyl alcohol. To melt all of this together, I'm going to pop our measuring cup into our water bath. So this is a small saucepan that's got about 1 inch or 3 centimeters of water in the bottom of it, and a silicone trivet or drink coaster. And I'm going to go put this on the stovetop over medium heat for about 20 to 30 minutes until everything has melted through. Once everything is melted, you can remove your measuring cup from your water bath, dry that off. And we're going to check the temperature of this because we're adding a preservative. So this is just a meat thermometer, and it's in Fahrenheit, which is sort of irksome. But we need it to be under 122 degrees Fahrenheit so that our preservative isn't deactivated. So it's just slowly registering here. I am looking at getting a infrared one where you can just sort of zap things and it tells you what the temperature is, because those kinds of thermometers look so cool. Just creeping up to 120. Okay, so there's at 122. So it's definitely still too warm. So you're going to kind of stir that to help encourage it to cool. So over here we have our 2 cool down ingredients. We have our vitamin E and our liquid germall plus, our preservative. And so each of those is about 2 drops. And I'm not telling you that because if you don't have a scale, you should just measure them in drops, because you really should not, absolutely do not do that. But I know that a lot of scales don't do great with really, really tiny amounts. And so sometimes you'll be weighing them out, waiting for those first couple digits to register on your scale, and you're adding more and more and more, and they're just not registering, and you're going, oh my goodness, what's wrong? And then suddenly they do register, and it's way, way, way more than you need, and probably way more than 2 drops. So if you are weighing your those ingredients out and you've passed kind of the 2, 3, 4 drop threshold and your scale still isn't registering any numbers, you should probably just look at getting a more accurate scale, because that's clearly not working for sort of these purposes. Either that or make larger batches. But if you make larger batches of everything, you end up with a lot of stuff if you make as much stuff as I do. All right, let's see how this is coming along here. So I'm just tipping this to try to get, and yes, that is my dog, as much of the probe sort of submerged as possible. All right, so this is kind of registering around 140 degrees Fahrenheit, which is obviously sort of much too warm. Keep stirring. Okay, so that's registering around 120. So let's get these ingredients incorporated. And we'll add our essential oils quickly. So we're going to have 3 drops of oak moss absolute, 2 drops of CO2 distilled ginger root, and 1 drop of michelia alba leaf. And now we're going to pour this into our container. So this is a 1 ounce push-up tube. So make sure that you've got the foot of it pushed all the way down to the bottom. And in we go. All right, and now we're just gonna leave that to set up. Once it's fully set up, it'll be uniform in color and solid, and the tube won't feel warm. And then you're ready to sort of give it a shove, and you are off to the races. So to use this, just glide this over your skin when it's just dry and skin, and then wipe it off with a damp microfiber cloth, and that's it. It's really, really simple to use, and I find that I tend to use a lot less product. I can give that a bit of a wipe down. I tend to use a lot less product this way, so this 25-gram batch is going to last me absolutely ages. Another benefit of using less is that it is a lot less likely to be drying, which is always great at this time of year. But I thought we would do just a little bit of a demo here with some of our leftovers. So you can grab a little bit of that there and get a little bit of water, and you can see how that just immediately turns into this lovely, creamy cleansing balm. It's just gorgeous. And then when it comes to wipe it off, not a microfiber cloth, but you know, it's here. It really wipes off just absolutely beautifully and leaves your skin feeling clean, but not too dry. So yeah, there you go. You just made a beautiful ginger oak moss cleansing balm in a stick. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and remember to check out the blog entry that's linked in the description box below. That's where you'll find information on scaling and substitutions and the full written recipe and written instructions and links to all of the ingredients. So thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.